Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce someone I'm proud to say is a close partner of the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy, as well as a close friend, His Excellency, Ambassador Abdul Basit. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Ambassador Abdul Basit is presently serving as Pakistan's ambassador to Germany. Ambassador Basit is a graduate from Edwards College, Peshawar, and completed his master's degree in international relations from Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad, in 1981. He joined the Foreign Service of Pakistan in 1982. During his career so far, Ambassador has served in Moscow, New York, Sana'a, and as Deputy High Commissioner in London in the year 2003. Before taking up his first ambassadorial post in May this year, Ambassador Basit was serving as Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson in Islamabad, as well as Additional Secretary for Europe and the FODP. He has represented Pakistan at various international conferences and participated in important multilateral negotiations on arms control and security-related issues. The ambassador's lecture this evening is on the topic, Cultural Bridges Between Pakistan and Germany in the Context of Globalization and Multiculturalism. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a very, very warm and heartfelt welcome for the ambassador, His Excellency Ambassador Abdul Basit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and rest assured I will be all political this evening. Let me, before I dwell on the subject given to me, just give you a few thoughts on multiculturalism itself. When on 7 July 2005, terrorists struck London, I was Pakistan's Deputy High Commissioner there. And I think 2 or 3 days after that, those tragic bomb attacks, my High Commissioner was summoned, not summoned but called to the 10 Downing Street by senior staff officers or people who were dealing with that issue at the moment of the former Prime Minister Tony Blair. And the High Commissioner very kindly asked me to accompany her. So we went to 10 Downing Street, and to our surprise, we were told about, first of all, we kind of expressed our condolences to 10 Downing, and then the conversation continued. So it was pointed out to us by one of the advisors that most of terrorists who perpetrated that act were British Pakistanis. And the government of Pakistan had to collaborate with the British government in order to get to the bottom of the things. So my High Commissioner asked whether those terrorists whose names were being mentioned in the media were those of Pakistan origin or Pakistan heritage. Our interlocutors paused a little bit and then replied that most of them were of Pakistan heritage. Now here I'm trying to draw a distinction between Pakistan origin and Pakistan heritage. Then the High Commissioner replied that if those were of Pakistan heritage, then how Pakistan was really involved, or how you are asking us to really cooperate or coordinate with your authorities to get to the bottom. Because those young people, they were born in Britain, they were raised in Britain, they were educated in Britain. So how come you are putting the onus on the government of Pakistan for their misdeeds? Now here, there is a distinction, as we talk, as we take it, is about these fine distinctions. One can easily say that multiculturalism has failed. And we have seen that following that particular event, the British government immediately shifted its focus from multiculturalism to community cohesion. And it was no surprise when Prime Minister Cameron last year officially declared multiculturalism as a failed policy. Now, it is very easy for host governments who host foreign ethnic communities to declare anything. But the question is whether multiculturalism is a good thing or a bad thing. Now, we are taking multiculturalism as we understand it in the context of Western Europe or the West as a whole. And most of the communities which came to these countries, including Europe, after the Second World War, whether they be Turkish people coming to Germany in the 60s as guest workers, or Pakistanis going to the UK in the 70s as laborer, as blue-collar workers, or Pakistani professionals going to the USA in the 50s and 60s as professionals, doctors, engineers, and so on and so forth. Now the question arises whether multiculturalism in its essence is a good thing or a bad thing. Now first of all, multicultural presupposes that there are many cultures existing in a society, and it's an acknowledgement that there are other cultures as well. Now, these diverse cultures may also exist in a country. For example, you take Britain. There are diverse cultures. If you go to England, you will find a different culture. You go to Scotland, you will find a different culture. You go to Wales. And it is no surprise that in 2014, Scotland would be having a referendum whether or not they would like to remain in the UK. So there are diversities even within a society, but here we are talking about those ethnic minorities which immigrated to the West following the Second World War for economic reasons or for political reasons. There are many communities which have sought political refuge, asylum in these countries, and then there are refugees. For example, refugees from Afghanistan following the Soviet occupation in 1979 traveled around the world to seek refuge. So here the question comes down to, in my opinion, when we talk about multiculturalism, as to how, and if you see around the world, you will not find, mostly I would say, problems if there is a community from Spain, community from Italy living in Germany, or community from any other European countries, even Poland or Bulgaria or any other country. You would not really face a huge problem. But when you have minorities or people, immigrants from countries, from backgrounds which are ostensibly not in sync with your value systems, there the problem arises. Now here we are talking about Muslim communities, to be honest with you. Let me go candid with you. When we talk about multiculturalism, it is more in the context of Muslim ethnic minorities, be them from Turkey, be them from Pakistan, or from any other country, Islamic country. Now in the past, and it's a problem. It's a problem because Islam as a religion, and let me say frankly, has a value system which may not be in sync with your value system per se. Now let me explain. As we have seen recently, a judgment or order by a Cologne court about circumcision. That is now part of integral to our religious belief. Whereas you look at that problem through the prism of human rights. But for us, that is not really a human rights issue. It's a religious issue. Now here comes the conflict. For you, for a liberal democracy based on universal declaration of human rights, for you it is, you see the issue of veil from a different perspective. Whereas we look at that issue from entirely a different outlook. So we do have divergences in our outlook stemming from our respective religious beliefs and faiths. I am not saying here for a moment that they cannot coexist with each other. They have been coexisting with each other for centuries, and I am sure they will continue to coexist in one way or another. I am not saying that there is some clash of civilization, not at all. But the question is that if over 3 million Turkish or German Turkish are living here in this country, how you would like to treat them? Because multiculturalism in its essence, it's not about 100 people, foreign ethnic group living in Germany or in UK. When we talk about ethnic groups and when we invoke multiculturalism, that is obviously done on the basis of vast minority, sizable minority. When you have 4 to 5 million ethnic minorities living in your country and your overall population, total population is 60 to 70 million people, then you need to think about it as to how these 3, 4, 6 million people can be accommodated, can be made more productive to your national life. But unfortunately, multiculturalism as it has been practiced in the West, while it does acknowledge that there are different cultures and they have to be acknowledged, that has to an extent promoted not, as we say, syncretic culture, but fragmentation in our societies, in Western societies. Whereas the idea inherent in multiculturalism is to promote syncretism, amalgamation of all cultures to produce a better culture. But unfortunately, instead of promoting that, multiculturalism, especially in the UK, because multiculturalism has never been practiced in Germany in my view, but in the UK, it has the counter result in the sense that it produced separate communities. But on the other hand, if you study the UK system, Pakistani number about over 1.3 million of Pakistan origin or Pakistan heritage people. And the UK has produced brilliant members of parliament, even from Pakistan origin in their system. As a matter of fact, as a result of the last election in the UK in 2008, for the first time a Pakistani woman, a Pakistan origin woman, was appointed as co-chair of the Conservative Party, Miss Baroness Saida Warsi, who is now the minister in the Foreign Office there. So that system has encouraged to some extent members of the ethnic minorities to come and climb the social ladder, political or social ladder. But at the same time, it has not produced the desired result. The desired result in the sense that if you go to the UK, you would still find people, ethnic minorities feeling more comfortable in interacting with each other. They have their own clubs, they have their own even schools in Britain, which are funded by the government, community schools, which are part of the main education system in the UK. They have their own community centers. So they hardly ethnic minority communities hardly come across with the majority or the mainstream community. So hence, multiculturalism in the UK particularly has not produced the desired results. So now there is some thinking going on as to how to produce community cohesion, because globalization has brought about so much influence, or it has impacted in so many ways our daily life, both individually as well as collectively, that it has become absolutely important to think of innovative ways as to how ethnic minority groups can be accommodated or encouraged to create synergy, syncretism, as I said earlier. So this point I wanted to make because it is important in the context of understanding multiculturalism as it is being practiced. Now, obviously, here in Germany, there are over 4 million Muslims live in this country, and Germany has always made an effort to try to integrate them, because integration and assimilation is slightly different than what you have in multiculturalism. It is also different than what you have in the US, because the US system is based on a kind of melting pot, where all immigrants are supposed to be part of that pot, melt into that and become part of that pot. Because without that, you cannot really move forward, both as individually and collectively. Whereas in Europe, countries are slightly different. I gave you the example of the UK. They did practice multiculturalism for a while. Now they are looking for other ways as to how to integrate ethnic minorities. But in Germany, they look at this issue slightly differently, because German as a nation state would not like this their nation state concept to be weakened in any way. And they do see, in my view, I may be wrong, but in my view, they do see ethnic minorities, especially from developing countries, and also especially those minorities which have an Islamic Muslim background, slightly out of tune with their overall national ethos. So it is a big challenge for them as to how to promote policies which lead to their integration, if not assimilation, into the society. And I must admire them, because over the years, Germany has been very successful in promoting that culture in a way that also preserved their German nationhood in its totality. Though there are challenges here and there, but at the same time, in Germany, issues are more about not about promoting multiculturalism, because that in any case would be against the very spirit of nation state. But they have tried to accommodate ethnic minorities and their cultures to exist side by side with the mainstream culture. Now, its results will be more pronounced or clear perhaps 20, 30, 50 years down the road, because when first generation comes, it has its own problems, its own difficulties. And as you have second, third generation, things become more clear, get clearer with the passage of time. So we do not know at this stage as to how Germany's attitude towards its ethnic minorities has, whether it has produced the desired results or it has created more wedges or more chasms within the society. So it is, I personally feel, because it's a generational process, it takes time. Because even Pakistanis who live here, about 75,000 Pakistanis live here. They may be Pakistanis or German Pakistanis or Germans. Now, the first generation which came to Germany in the 60s or 70s, they worked very hard, they struggled very hard, and tried to make both ends meet. The second generation, they tried to put them to German schools, learn German, and tried to be part of the mainstream. Now, challenge for us, it's in reverse, because from our perspective, 75,000 Germans of Pakistan heritage, they're an important tool for us in the sense that they provide us an organic link between Pakistan and Germany. And the challenge as Pakistan's ambassador for me is how to keep the second and third generation in touch with their country of heritage, if not origin. And that is a challenge which I face on a daily basis. But at the same time, when it comes to Pakistan and Germany, I can tell you that multiculturalism has no place when it comes to Germany. What we are trying to have is more cultural links between Pakistan and Germany, and to use our community, Pakistani community in Germany, to play a role in the sense to create more awareness of our culture and create more understanding here in Germany of our culture, of our difficulties, our problems, and to mobilize the Pakistani community to achieve that objective. Now, Pakistani community as a whole in Germany, as I said, originally came in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they were mostly in blue-collar jobs. But now, as they progressed, the second and third generation are now, they're different league. They are showing far better understanding of the mainstream, and they're trying to, if not integrate, at least interact with the mainstream. Now, the problem with ethnic minorities, including Pakistani community here, is that first of all, language barriers, now they're no more there, I would say, because all second, third generation German of Pakistani origin, they have been attending a school, so there is no problem. Language barrier is no more there. But still, surprisingly, Muslim minorities in the West, they tend to feel more comfortable interacting with their own people from their own ethnic background. And it doesn't surprise me at all when I see Pakistani restaurants here or Pakistani communities celebrating together their religious festivals like Eid or any other festival, or during the month of Ramadan. So those barriers are still there. And here it is also important to understand what mainstream community is doing to reach out to ethnic communities, minorities, because it is not a one-way street. It also depends on what the mainstream community is doing in order to understand the ethnic minorities in your respective countries. Unfortunately, I do not see much of an effort on that count in the West as a whole. You would not be surprised that following the 2005 bombing in London, there was a spate of visits to mosques in Britain by British officials, politicians, and that was a kind of temporary outreach program. They went to mosques across the UK to understand as to how people think, what people think, or Muslims especially think in the UK. But then it lost somewhere in the air. That whole effort kind of whittled down with the passage of time. So there is, unfortunately, I do not see any specific policy or sustained effort in the West to to integrate and not assimilate, but integrate ethnic minorities, especially with Muslim, Islamic background, into the mainstream society. Those, I think, we're still struggling with ideas, with notions, and it will take some time for us to understand, because globalization has its own dynamics now. Whether you like it or not, people are traveling across continents. There are economic opportunities across continents, and these multinationals have created a new culture for us. You would find many Pakistanis working in Deutsche Bank or in Commerce Bank or other multinationals, Siemens, or you name anything. And there, because of economic reasons, they are either living in Germany or UK or any other European country. So globalization has its own dynamics, and they are creating opportunities. But on the other hand, they're also creating problems, because countries like Germany, with a very strong national sentiment, nationhood, they are creating some challenges for the country as a whole as to how to accommodate these ethnic communities without really impinging or weakening the national sentiment. And that is a challenge, and I do not know, I do not really have answers to these questions, but these are relevant questions which people ask, because if you promote, let's say, in Germany there is that is not the case, but in the UK particularly, because they did practice multiculturalism for decades, and there you find Pakistani school or Indian school or Bangladeshi school. You will also find even hospitals run along ethnic lines. You will find community centers, mosques along ethnic lines. So there is too much division along ethnic lines, and there is no incentive to mainstream themselves. So in Germany, slightly, as I said, things are handled differently, but at the end of the day, I think it is important to understand as to how ethnic minorities are doing in a particular society, because you would not like 3 or 4 million people, members of your population, to continue to be dependent on your social system. You would like them to be as productive as the mainstream people are. You would not like them to be become a burden on your system, and that, I think, is important. You make them productive, to make them useful to society. It is important that we think through these issues and try to come up with some tenable solution. Multiculturalism, in my view, has failed. What we need to do is to promote interculturalism. Interculturalism is more about cultures interacting with each other, because that is a way not only to understand, not only to acknowledge and accommodate each other, but to understand each other. Because all our efforts to create super cultures have failed. You look at Britain, Britishness. What is Britishness? We do not know. That's why we still have problems when it comes to Scotland. Now in the West, there is an effort, in Europe particularly, to create a European identity. And we human beings are a strange creature, we have so many identities, layer after layer. Sometimes we identify ourselves with a football club, sometimes we identify ourselves with a city, sometimes with a country, with a region. So we have the capacity to transcend our innate biases and to identify ourselves with larger concepts. But at the same time, we are very stubborn when it comes to our core values, and that makes the whole task very difficult. So this is exactly we are trying to do as here in Germany, to create more bridges between Pakistan and Germany. and our 75,000 diaspora in Germany plays an important role. And through exchange of cultural troupes, through exchange of students, we are trying to create that understanding. But how does that impact our community in Germany? It's a different ball game. I tell my diaspora that more useful you become for this country, more helpful you can be for Pakistan. Because if you're not helpful, or if you're not useful for this society, how can you be useful for Pakistan? So it is fundamental that you mainstream yourself, try to climb the ladder up socially, economically, politically, and you have to involve yourself in the political system here. And I do not know much about the Turkish community, but I do understand that there are people who have made to the top, in the sense that they are very active in the political system here, and which is good, because the more they integrate themselves, they become active, they can resolve problems of their communities as well, and be more productive to Germany as a whole. But this is a question, these are the questions which came to my mind, I thought to share with them. I do not know to what extent these have been relevant to your conference on multiculturalism, but I have my own experiences, and I find this task very, very difficult task, and I think no one has a solution because it's not one size fits all. You have to be kind of, innovative about this, and try to have approaches which can work in a given situation. So Germany has done a good job so far, but the real results will be more visible, I think, after 20-30 years, because then globalization would have also played by then its role, and we would then see whether it is multiculturalism or interculturalism or integration or assimilation, how things really go. So thank you very much for your attending to listening to me very patiently. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. You actually unintentionally complimented very well with the speakers earlier today. We had two members of the German Parliament where we also discussed this debate, interculturalism as opposed to multiculturalism. Okay. So it actually fits in perfectly to the discussions we've had earlier today. And we now actually, if you still would agree, Your Excellency, have three different formats in which we can interact with the ambassador. I'd be happy to take a few questions and comments right now. Then we're going to do a brief interview, about 10 minutes, on the second stage over there, sort of where I have about 4 or 5 colleagues also to ask questions. And then at 6 o'clock, we have an interactive discussion where we'll be sitting in a circle. That'll be chaired by His Excellency Yasser Yakesh, and that would be a third opportunity, again, to engage in dialogue and questions. But before we move to the interview, I'd be happy to take at least 1 or 2 comments or questions from you. And as always, if you could briefly introduce yourselves when posing the question, please.
Thank you. Your Excellency, thank you very much for your very enlightening presentation. It's my second time that I listened to you. I listened to you last week again here. You've touched upon many very, very controversial issues and concepts. And I'm really surprised to see that you're more optimistic than some German parliamentarian concerning multiculturalism here in Germany, because I see it differently, and they see it differently as well. Most German politicians think that multiculturalism in Germany has failed. You mentioned that the UK approach to multiculturalism failed in a way. I do believe that multiculturalism in Europe has failed, not only in the UK, but in Europe vis-a-vis other parts of the world. You also touch upon the US, in which, as you mentioned, it's melting pot. It's more of assimilation. I was wondering, why wouldn't you touch up on Canada? Because I think Canada is the best model of multiculturalism, in which multiculturalism takes probably the best form. Yeah. My question now is, thank you. My question is, because you talked also about Muslims, and it is one thing that probably we tend to forget when we talk about Muslims. We always think of Muslims as Arabs. That like not all Muslims are Arabs and not all Arabs are Muslims. And that's something we need really to take into consideration when we're referring to these categories. My question is, in the past, probably like 3 or 4 decades, Northern Europe used to look upon Southern European countries and people as the other from a cultural studies point of view. Like the other as being exotic, as being different. But then when they give themselves the chance to get to know them, then they found out there were a lot of similarities in terms of history, civilization, race, and culture. And then now they see them as part of like who they are. Don't you think now we are at the stage where the West, and by the West I mean Europe, looks at the Muslims the way they used to look at Southern European? Now they look at us as that, you know, that strange, exotic other. And how much time do you think it will take them to reach the point that they reach it toward the Southern European? And thank you.
I wish I had a crystal ball, you know, to. But this is exactly my point, that if you go through history, you will find, you know, even Europeans fighting among themselves. And now they have come to a point where they can talk to each other and even think of a European identity. This gives me hope that though at present Muslims are considered not even a stranger but extra stranger, but globalization has its own dynamics. And while, you know, on the one hand globalization is creating synergies, bringing us together in different ways, on the other hand, it is also kind of, you know, stoking fragmentation. You see what is happening in the UK, or what happened in the Soviet Union or Yugoslavia. There are more, Kosovo for example, you know, more and other nations are coming up. But globalization, in my view, eventually would create more understanding, mutual understanding about religions, about faiths, about cultures. And that gives me hope that if not, I said that multiculturalism is not the way forward, because multiculturalism helps create separate communities. So I would propose interculturalism, where cultures come together, they interact, they come across each other and understand each other. So that is the way forward. I do not know what is going to happen, but it's a long-term process. It's a generational process. It will take 20, 30 years to understand or to know as to how globalization has played a role in creating more understandings and creating an environment where different cultures exist. Because we are all seeking harmony in diversity. Unity in diversity is a cliche, so I would not use that. And that is perhaps an objective which is elusive as far as I am concerned. But harmony in diversity. We can live side by side, understand each other, and try to, you know, to create eclectic culture, which is again a utopian thought, but still, when we live together, for example, in the UK now, tikka masala curry or what, that has become a national thing, you know, instead of fish and chips. So these are the things which can be borrowed from each other, and there is no reason as to why we shouldn't be optimistic about our world, because human beings, we are strange creatures, you know, we have the capacity. I will give you one example. Following the floods in Pakistan in 2010, the spontaneous response in Germany was from the people of Germany. And they raised, within 2 days, they raised $300 million for victims in Pakistan. So human beings have the capacity to come together in times of crises. So one should be optimistic about our future as a whole.
Additional questions or comments here? Okay.
Thank you very much for your lecture. It was really interesting for me. And for me, my name is Artur, and I'm from Latvia, and I'm intern here in ICT. So I'm from Latvia, there we also have minority-majority, of course, issue because of Russians and Latvians relations. And there we use usually a four-concept model. It's integration. It's when both communities, majority and minority, wants to interact to each other. Then, of course, assimilation, when minority don't want to preserve their own culture, but want to cooperate with majority. Then marginalization, when they don't want to preserve their own culture, but don't want to communicate with majority also. And segregation, when they don't want to interact, but they want to preserve their culture. Then now comes multiculturalism and interculturalism. Of course, multiculturalism is well, famous word, I know it, but for me it was like synonymous for integration model. So I see that you disagree and you put it differently. So would you be so kind to somehow operationalize, to put these two concepts in this this model of integration, segregation, and so on? So what is this difference, shortly, to repeat maybe once again, clarify? So multiculturalism is different with integration, segregation, assimilation, and interculturalism.
Yeah, multiculturalism is very clear, you know, because you acknowledge that there are different cultures existing in a society. And then the overall objective of multiculturalism may be to promote integration. But unfortunately, the empirical evidence suggests that multiculturalism has not promoted integration. Rather, it has worked contrary to the objective. For example, I gave you the example of the United Kingdom, where multiculturalism as a policy was adopted in the 70s and in the 80s. But instead of promoting or mainstreaming the ethnic minorities, what happened in the UK was that created separate ethnic groups. It encouraged separatism rather than integration. They have separate community centers, separate schools. So those cultures, minority culture and majority culture, never interacted. And then, you know, there is a tendency, and then again it depends on the number. If you are 100 people, you know, living in a foreign country, then compulsions are different. But if you are in millions, then compulsions are different. Then you have the power, you think you have the power to preserve your culture and also inculcate that to your next generation. So then there are different compulsions at work. So integration is different from assimilation. Assimilation you see in the UK. In the US, they think it is assimilation, but there too I don't believe it is assimilation. But their concept is different because the entire American community is immigrants, you know, constitutes of immigrants. So their philosophy is totally different. But here in the in Europe, things are working differently. So integration means that you still kind of accept the reality of diversity in culture, but at the same time, and you allow ethnic minorities to be kind of, you know, to take pride in their culture and to practice it. But at the same time, you are also part of the mainstream. Now that is a difficult call. But in Germany, you see that has been put into practice in one way or another. So I'm more kind of, when I look at my community, which is 75,000 Pakistani diaspora, I feel very encouraged because over the last 3-4 decades, they have come a long way, especially in second and third generation. They are making attempts to mainstream themselves, to climb up the ladder, social ladder, to move incrementally, you know, up the ladder. So here there are different approaches at work, but I think we should be very clear in our head as to what do we want from ethnic minorities. And as I said earlier, responsibility is also on the majority community, the mainstream community. How much effort you make to reach out to minorities, to try to understand them. How many of you, for example, go to Germans or go to Turkish places here. I know doner kebab is very popular in Germany, but how many you visit Turkish families? How much interaction is there? Because at work, at schools, it is good that Germany is not practicing multiculturalism. Otherwise, you would have found Turkish schools here giving their own education as happening in the UK. So here integration is perhaps more effectively working in Germany. I do not know about Latvia, but Germany being a big country, it has resources and it is working more effectively as compared to other countries. But what happens over the next 30, 40 years, we do not know. But my own take on this is that we should be optimistic because economic compulsions, globalization is changing our world very fast and there are opportunities for everyone because now there is immigration, taking place in reverse. People are now traveling to China, to other countries where they find more economic opportunities. I was reading an account of a British national who left Britain and now living in China because of economic opportunities. So economic compulsions are very important and the fact that in Britain, for example, because there is a concept of dual nationality in Britain. I can be Pakistani, I have two passports, I can be Pakistani and I can also have a British passport. So I can travel on two passports. But here in Germany, that concept is not there. So here possibilities of integration are more they're more pronounced as compared to other countries in Europe.
Your Excellency, on that note, I'd like to thank you for, on the one hand, your clarity and honesty in terms of dealing with the challenges that still exist in Germany and also around the world, but in particular for your optimism in terms of seeing also the way things are going. We also at the Institute for Cultural Diplomacy see this as a chance, whether it's interculturalism or multiculturalism. So we really appreciated the keynote address as well as the questions afterwards.
Thank you.
And I'd ask you to all please help me in expressing our gratitude to the ambassador.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.